Well, I've been encouraged to take just a few minutes here tonight today to promote an event that we're doing tonight. We're actually doing some training tonight right here in the main sanctuary at 6 o'clock. It's a Citizen Action Group. Your Citizen Action Group ministry is sponsoring the event. Yes, indeed. Bless for doing that. And so the Citizen Action Group ministry, for those of you who aren't real clear, they are here to support the efforts of the pastor in serving you so that you're aware of what's going on out there and how you can be effective citizens in the realms, when you're interacting in the realms of society, culture, politics, and government. And you might say, well, that's not my lane. Well, hold on, because there are a lot of things that are happening to you that the government is doing. So if you want to get a bit of a grasp, we're doing something tonight called Horizon Training, Planning and Preparation. And the way I want to describe this for you, if I may, is by telling you a little story here that starts back in 2003 when I left this church. I actually was with Southside Victory Church, and I had the pleasure and honor of serving my pastor, Pastor Craig and Ann, at the church. But I was called out to the Okanagan, as Pastor Craig had mentioned, and when I got there, it was May of 2003. Well, in August, on August 16th, in the morning at 4:10 a.m., right in the Okanagan Valley. If you guys are familiar with the Okanagan Valley, I moved to a little town called Summerland, and across the lake, it's a 120-kilometer long lake, about 3 kilometers wide. I looked across the lake, and there was a little puff of smoke that was on the horizon. And what had happened was a lightning strike had hit at 4:10 a.m. and I was driving to work a couple hours later, and I saw that, and there was one helicopter that was picking up water out of the lake and dropping it on the fire. And I thought to myself at the time, oh, no problem, man. He'll make quick work of that, and we'll be back out. I'm sure that'll be no problem. Well, you know what? As I looked across the lake as well that morning, I could see Kelowna, the city of Kelowna, on one end of the lake, and on the other end of the lake was the little town of Naramata. And I could imagine that in those two communities, as they looked on the horizon and saw that tiny little puff of smoke that was coming up from that fire, they probably looked out too and said, no problem. That's just a little, it probably even look like a cloud to some of them. But what they didn't know at the time, what they lacked, was some very key pieces of intelligence that they needed to know at that time to make that judgment that it was going to be no problem. What they didn't know was, first of all, that there was a constant wind that was going to be blowing for the next 45 days straight. No let up. What they also didn't know at the time was that it was going to be the driest summer on record to date in the Okanagan. And the third thing that they didn't have in the way of intelligence as to what they were looking at on the horizon was they didn't know that in the Okanagan, in the park where the fire was, where the lightning struck, all around that park for decades, fuel had fallen off of the trees in the way of the branches and things and leaves and fallen on the ground, and there was about 4 to 6 feet of fuel covering the entire ground. So what happened was over the next 45 days, that constant wind blew that fire over the 6 feet of fuel during one of the driest seasons ever on record in the Okanagan. And at the end of the day, 27,000 residents were evacuated from their homes. And those people that were looking from their backyards saying no problem, 239 of them lost their homes. They burned to the ground. We had 1,600 Canadian military fighters Canadian military personnel on the ground fighting the fire with 1,000 firefighters. 60 fire departments came. $200 million in property damage and economic loss at the end of the day, 45 days later. Do you want to know something interesting about that fire too? Is that they never put it out. You know who put it out? Because the wind shifted one day and the fire started blowing back on itself, and the days started getting cooler. So in all of our efforts. So why am I telling you all of this? Because there are fires that are burning on our horizon that may not seem ominous to us now, and they might even look like, that they're not even going to affect us at all in the future. But if the conditions are just right and we don't pay attention to the intelligence that is available to us now and the road we have ahead of us towards that fire, the timeline that leads us up to that actual point in time that we can see on the horizon, then we could end up with a very serious problem here in Canada. Now, the cool thing about it is that in the political realm, is if you read a situation on the horizon correctly, if you actually read it right, you can take a threat and you can turn it into an opportunity. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Horizon training, planning, and preparation. 6 o'clock right here in the sanctuary, and we'd love to have you here. Thanks so much for your time. Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharp and I will be your host for today. Well, it is June and we're going to jump right into it today because we have a jam-packed agenda. What you have just watched is the introduction of a training that we did in a church in Calgary, a Citizen Action Group ministry meeting in Calgary, and I'm going to share some of that training with you today right off the top. Right after the training, I'm going to take you into a conversation that I had earlier on in the week with a gentleman who has a special event coming up on the Father's Day weekend. It is a fantastic event. Great information I want to share with you there. And then finally, I want to share with you today information about an upcoming Transformer event. For those of you with a heart for your community, you're going to want to stick around to get the details because this upcoming event that's happening on June 13th is going to be a good one. Okay, so let's get right into the training. I've got no time to spare today. Thank you so much for joining us on the briefing today. And let's get into the training. And it is called Horizon Training, Planning, and Preparation. Let's go straight to it. All right, so let's talk about horizon training. Why horizon? Why horizon? One of the things that we don't believe in is we don't believe that we need to be jumping up and down frantically doing things like chasing legislation through the House of Commons. If we find ourselves in a place where I'm getting you on the phone and I'm like frantic and going, please sign this petition, we got to fight, we got to do this, then that means that I really haven't served you as well as I could have, because really, for the most part, you can kind of see a lot of things coming. Now, some things do sneak up on you, right? Some things do come up on you, so I'm leaving room for that. But for the most part, we can see what is coming down the pipe at us in the political and governmental realm. So that's why we call it horizon training, and that's why we identify what we call horizon events. Now, the one horizon event that we're going to be talking about tonight specifically is we're going to be talking about the horizon event that we know is happening that is going to be the change of government. The federal government at some point in time in the future is going to change. We know that to be a fact because governments always change, right? Eventually. Now, some people might think that they can read the crystal ball and say it's going to change on October the 27th, 2025, because that's the date the Prime Minister, okay, I don't know. It might happen sooner, right? We all have heard this before, right? But it is going to happen. So what we want to be doing is we want to, first of all, if we're going to make the horizon statement that the government is going to change, we want to now put on our lens where we're at, our lens that we look through at the horizon, and make sure that we're doing everything we can to gather the intelligence required and the information that we required to meet that event, being as prepared as we can be by using this road ahead of us to prepare, okay? But let me tell you what's more important than the horizon event itself, the horizon statement, the one that I just made. The thing that is more important is you and you understanding your positioning here as the person looking at the horizon. From where you're standing is more important than the event that you're looking at in the future. So let me explain. You yourself, if you are looking at the horizon and making judgments about it through a Christian worldview, then I think that we're doing that from the right perspective, right? So what you want to be doing is you want to making sure that you are, that arrow here is what we teach, is that you're aligned with God's perspective on whatever it is you're looking at. So that everything you do moving forward is governed by your understanding that you're going to conduct yourself in a way that is aligned with Scripture. The second arrow here is pointed to the side because one of the things that we encourage people to do is if you're going to be charging off into the horizon to meet or greet a threat
or an opportunity, we think it's a good idea to go with somebody. So you want to gather some people around with you, so you gather up some people beside you and take them on the road with you. The arrows on the side here, these arrows here are identifying your authorities. If you're going to be kitting yourself out to confront that opportunity or that threat on the horizon, we want to make sure that you are actually got the right understanding of, if you're a parent, for example, what is my authority as a parent? What, if I'm a constituent within an electoral district, what kind of authority do I have as a constituent? And if I'm, say, a citizen of Canada, I obviously have some authority there. Also, in this authority category we mentioned before, I may need to add an authority. So what I might do is I might purchase a membership in a political party and purchase that extra authority required to greet or meet that Horizon event. Okay? So let's take a look at that Horizon event. Sir, using... Did I just lose this? All right, that's good. Oh, that's a different tone. I got to hold that down a bit. How's that? All right. So this Horizon event, the government is going to change. Okay, some people make the mistake of looking at the Horizon event of the government's going to change, and they go, wait a second, if the government's going to change, I don't have to do anything at all. Because at this moment in time, in our nation of Canada, if you think that the federal government changing next, whatever the day is, I'll use October 27th, in 2025, everything's going to be just fine at that point, I've got to remind you of a couple of realities of the horizon. And we talked about that this morning. It's got to be a real perspective and an accurate perspective of what it is we're going to be dealing with. First of all, what is it going to be changing to is a question out there right now. If I'm saying the government's going to change, some of you might have immediately thought, wait a second, well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Conservative Party taking over at the federal level. But there might be people that go, hey, I think the PPC is going to, or maybe that there's another new party. So we've got to actually have a real quick conversation about, if we're going to really spend time evaluating the possibilities and probabilities of what's going to happen on October 27th, we've got to do some research as to what the possibilities are. So I'm going to give you a real quick exercise to give you an example of how we do that. Let's say that you believe that it's going to be this new party, and honestly, I'm not going to say the name, but it's a new party with a brand new leader that just came out. Well, this new party and the brand new leader, the leader just ran in a by-election, and in the by-election that he ran in, he got 238 votes, okay? That's not a good sign for a brand new party, not having run any candidates, all of a sudden going to be forming government on the horizon, okay? So can we just for now, just for conversation's sake, put that one aside. Now, we also have another party that ran in the last election and did amazingly well. There was a party that surprised everyone and won 5% of the popular vote. This party even shocked the people in the party. I talked to them. They said, wow, 5% of the popular vote we got as we challenged the status quo on the right side of the political spectrum, right? So that party, let me just review some numbers with you. Of the 338 ridings that the party ran candidates, they ran candidates in many of them, but of all of the ridings, they came out at the end of that electoral process with 0 wins. So they didn't win a single seat. Now, let's dig a little deeper into the numbers. If you have won 0 seats, let's take a look at how close you came to winning. Well, in 338 ridings across Canada, this political party that did amazingly well, and believe me, I know these people, they're friends of mine, and by the way, we help people like this. If you're working within this party, I actually would help you to advance these principles into that party. That's what we do. If you want to work with the party I'm talking about, I go, bring it, but I need to know that you're going to advance these principles, right? So this political party did so well that of the 338 ridings, they came second to the person who won in that riding in 7 ridings. So only 7 ridings. Of those 7 ridings that they came second to the person who won, they lost to the person that won by an average of 24,000 votes. So this is an amazing story about a great success, but I have to argue, is it perhaps a little premature to say that on the horizon in Canada, that we would be looking to another political right-wing alternative party winning the next election or taking over in the next election. It's just, it's hard for me as somebody who understands the numbers and reviews the numbers regularly to really make that reach for this election. Now, in our province of British Columbia, we've had a party growing and being built, the BC Conservative Party, for many years. We've had this party that has its troubles, and for years it's been struggling, but all of a sudden, look what happened this new election. Now they're polling ahead of the other party that is of the party of choice in British Columbia. So we will see these other competitive parties grow, but if we're again being honest with ourselves about the horizon event that we're talking about, we've got to really make the assumption that we are going to be looking at a Pierre Poilievre-led conservative government. I'm just gonna make that assumption. Now again, I'm happy to talk more about that after, but that's what we're going to be basing our assumptions on. So if we do have a Pierre Poilievre-led conservative government, you might say to yourself, if you're a Conservative Party member and you're feeling pretty comfortable, you might go, great, job done. Okay, meeting's over, let's all have coffee. But I've got to tell you that there's some things that we need to do and understand if that's the case. If that's the case, first of all, as the leader, you might think that he's just going to come in there and that he's going to all of a sudden just undo everything that's been done that you disagree with for the last 8 years. Okay, now if that's an assumption, we got to prove it up, right? So let's take a look at what is going to be required to undo what's been done. Some of it is going to have to be undone legislatively, right? But if it's undone legislatively, we may have the Conservative Party in power, and they may have the majority of seats in the House of Commons, but we still have, let's take a look at the Senate. Anything that's done legislatively in Canada in a Pierre Poilievre-led Conservative government is going to need to pass legislation through the Senate as well. So let's take a look at the Senate. You see how we do this? This is the process that we go through when we're evaluating things. So okay, let's take a look at the Senate. 105 seats in the Senate right now. You've got a majority of the senators are called independent or liberal, which is just another name for liberal. Sadly, it's a liberally led Senate. But what we don't have is we don't have a majority of conservative senators in the Senate. In the province of Alberta alone, where we are tonight, you have 2 Senate seats open in the province of Alberta. You have 3 Liberal senators that were appointed by Justin Trudeau, and you have 1 senator that was appointed by Stephen Harper that doesn't even sit in the Conservative caucus in the Senate. So there's a total of 13 Conservative senators in the Senate. Okay? So the reason I bring that up is not to disappoint you, but to bring to light the reality that if you think that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative-led Conservative government, or him leading the Conservative government, is going to undo legislatively what has been done, that is going to be a difficult task if you don't have cooperation from the Senate, which I don't believe that you'll necessarily have. So we can't count on it, right? So stroke that off. We also have the leader himself. Leader himself, there's lots of people in here, I believe, that have known Pierre for a long time. He's been around, we've seen him, he's been out there, but where is he strong, where is he weak? And remember, we're looking through the lens of somebody who's aligned with Scripture. I've got my buddy with me so I can bounce ideas off. I'm aware of my authorities, and I am totally all about the principles that undergird these 4 pillars. Parental authority, right of belief, freedom of religion, protecting the vulnerable, and fiscal responsibility. The truth is that he falls sadly short in some areas that are very important to us. One of them is life issues. Life issues, he falls short. Okay, so if that is going to be a reality in our horizon event scenario, then we have to, between now and then, we need to shore that up, don't we? We need to figure out a way to advance our principles into those conversations that take place around Pierre before he becomes the leader, because if we assume that after everything is going to be rosy, that is not going to happen, okay? Again, we're dealing with reality. What's another reality? Well, another reality is the bureaucratic way of the system that they've got here. There is a bureaucracy within all of the departments of government that have been entrenching themselves, believe me. The government has been on a hiring spree. Government has grown by 50% since the Liberals took power. So they have a massive bureaucracy that is entrenched in their ideas and the way that they do things. So the reality is that we cannot count on even a conservative-led Pierre Poilievre government to just again get in there and undo things. We also have the challenge of political activists within our own organization, if you want to call it that. If you're getting all excited about the Conservative Party of Canada itself, you don't actually have to look outside of the Conservative Party of Canada to find people that don't agree with you on certain things. So we also have to be activated within the Conservative Party of Canada. When? Before the government is formed here. Because what happens is, and I know there's a lot of people in here that have an awful lot of experience in politics, so I don't have to tell you that once people go to Ottawa, they sometimes kind of forget some of the things you talked about before. And, you know, oh yeah, don't you remember we were talking about advancing the protection for unborn children? And you don't forget that. Forgot all about that. So what we need to do is make sure that we're dealing with the political activists. We're doing what we can in the conversations that take place in bureaucracies. Within the Conservative Party itself, we want to make sure that we're building up those local electoral districts. And we want to make sure that we're actually having some conversations with local senators. I know that's something, honestly, it's amazing to me, but nobody that I know of in Canada, none of the organizations are actually identifying conversations and building community with the senators in their own provinces. Have you heard it? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. And I think there's an assumption because there's 105 senators. I mean, by the way, the 3 senators that Justin Trudeau appointed to Alberta are young enough that their retirement dates, because it's mandatory retirement at age 75. So you have 3 senators appointed by Justin Trudeau in Alberta that are, it's 2044 is the retirement date of one of them, 2039 and 2037. So I get it if we kind of look at that and go, you know what, there's other priorities. Let's focus on something else. But that doesn't mean we can't get into a room with these 3 senators and start having conversations with them about the things that are important to us right here. And that is what the National Leadership Briefing does, is that for those of you that stay on the briefing long enough, what we do is we find that as your understanding of the circumstances grows, your competence grows because your confidence grows. We actually spin and talk about all of these stories about these different principles that undergird the pillars, and you see us apply them within the conversations to people like elected representatives. Now, let me just bring one other thing to your attention here, is that that's not the only thing that we can do between now and then. This is an election that's going to establish a brand new government. And an election is driven by and powered by money. And far too often, and this is what we promote all the time to the people in our organization, is that if you are going to donate money because you believe that there needs to be a change in government, again, we're working under the assumption that we are going to have a new government and that the likelihood is it's going to be this conservative government, right? So people are going to be donating to the Conservative Party. Now, I don't have a problem with donating to the Conservative Party, but we teach that it is conditional money. You never ever donate $1 to a politician in any sense without having a conversation about what you believe, right? This is the one thing that so we actually help people have effective conversations with elected officials and those that are running for re-election or new candidates. Really important that we offer only conditional money. You can give conditional money to nomination candidates. You can give them to people that are seeking re-election. You can give them to school board trustee candidates, right? You can help fund those elections as well. But if you don't sit down and have a good conversation with them about these things and make it a condition of you giving them the money, then they will not pay attention to you once they're in office. I can assure you of that. All right. Another thing that we have the opportunity to do is that's kind of important is to know, especially if this is a conservative government situation, is that the policy process of the party. How many people are familiar with the party policy process of the Conservative Party of Canada specifically? Okay, so I want to go into this for you a little bit. Ever since I became aware that there were parties, I've attended every single policy convention of the Conservative Party of Canada because that's where I became activated into that party. That just happened to be my path. Now there's lots of other conventions and lots of other policy discussions that go on in other parties, but my experience is conservative. So every 2 years roughly, the party members get into a room and they have a policy document that is a representation of the things that they believe in. And so if you go to the Conservative Party of Canada website, you'll find this policy document there. Well, that policy document is a malleable thing. It changes regularly at these conventions because all of the delegates bring forward the input from the members in their area to the floor of the convention where they're debated on the floor of the convention. Now, what happens is that if they pass, and I have kind of a fun prop here, is that on the floor of the convention, everybody gets one of these. And I asked permission if I could take this, by the way, for training purposes. And so you're not supposed to take these with you. So this one I got permission for. But if you don't like the policy and you're an elected delegate at a convention, you just say, nope. And I got to tell you, that may seem like not a big deal, but I love to vote. I don't know if you guys like voting, but at a convention, you get to vote hundreds of times. It's like constantly voting. If you like it, you can vote yes, right? So this is the card. And to get there, you have to be an elected delegate. So you actually have to have one of these badges that gives you the right to be there, which means you've been elected to serve to represent the members in your riding at that convention. Why is this so important? Well, it's important in this particular case especially, not because the party policies that are passed at convention are binding on the Prime Minister, which they're not. If Pierre Poilievre gets elected at the next election and replaces the current government, he is not going to be bound by the policy book of the party. He doesn't have to do what is written in the policy book. And really, honestly, you don't really want to demand that of the Prime Minister because he becomes the Prime Minister of all Canadians the moment that he's elected, right? He is the leader of the party until he's elected to be Prime Minister, and then he's there. However, it sends a signal if we have a convention between right now and the election date, and we have an opportunity to advance policies that affirm these principles that are outlined in the 4 pillars here. It sends a signal to the new leader / possible Prime Minister that his entire election machinery is going to be focusing on these things. So he's going to need, as he cobbles together his election platform for the election that is going to hopefully install him in office, he is going to need the machinery of the party, which is made up of the members, to actually be happy with him. So he is going to need to actually consider at least what it is we advance. So the policy development process, especially at this particular time, prior to this horizon event of the next election, is really important. Now, I want to clarify one thing because somebody's going to definitely say this if they know anything about it is likely now, because of the possibility of an election coming up, it's likely now that the policy convention itself will happen after the actual election. However, the process is going to start here. The process is going to start between now and the next election, and all of these policy ideas are going to come forward, and believe me, it is going to be a battle of ideas. Don't think that there's not a whole room full of people somewhere else having a meeting right now talking about expanding euthanasia to include children and the mentally ill. Like, don't think that they're not saying, how can we preserve a woman's right to choose? You know, we need to entrench that in law, and perhaps we can change the constitution. You know, all these conversations, it's just So we're at our meeting, they're at their meetings, talking about the very same thing. And that's why we need to pay attention to that particular thing as well. So between now and then, if I had to give you a list of all of the things, and I'm going to wrap it up with this because I want to leave some time for questions, is that if I had to make a list of everything that we need to be paying attention to between now and the horizon event of the next election, which will install the new Prime Minister, we have number one on my list, which I haven't mentioned yet, is we need to have really well structured and good strategy prayer points. We need to be praying throughout this entire process, and we need to be communicating. For example, if we dispatch a delegation of people into the Conservative Party of Canada policy process, we're going to want prayer teams that are covering those people. Because it is a battleground. Believe me, for those of you who've been to convention, I went with, we got Neil Campbell here. Neil, I mean, we went to the last convention. It's a battle. And it's not a physical battle, it's a spiritual battle. As you're discussing these ideas, like I just can't wait until I get to see what's really going on around me spiritually, you know, because we're going to see that one day. But so there's that, making sure that we have our prayer strategies ready to deploy throughout the entire road ahead here. Now, the next thing is that we need to be taking full advantage of training and education opportunities along the way. So these types of meetings, all of the resources that we're cobbling together with National Leadership Briefing, Canada Family Action, they're all, like I say, we want to see these advance. So they're designed to effect change when somebody says, I am willing to mobilize, right? So that has to be done. We have to make sure that, again, I mentioned that conditional money and donation strategies are in place, that we've all got our talking points, and those of you that have resources to sow into an elect, don't just give it to somebody. You know, just let's have a conversation. Let's do some training on how do you deploy conditional money. We also want to take advantage of candidate search opportunities, which is where we need to work with other organizations and continue to do that, networking, looking for those opportunities where we can have new candidates. Now, you guys have, it's interesting, Alberta, you have 3 new ridings, 3 new federal ridings coming up in the province of Alberta. We have a brand new federal riding in British Columbia, and we have one in Brampton. So there's 5 new electoral districts that have been established in our country because if populations move around, they redraw the boundaries. And so you have 3 of them here, and I know that there's going to be lots of opportunities there to actually support various candidates, right? I'm not going to get into who the candidates are and who's on deck, but we definitely have those opportunities. We also need to, the next thing, opportunity just on the list is there are electoral district associations that are in place already that support the re-election efforts of all of the existing members of Parliament. They're electoral district associations. They're boards of 30 people. We need to be on those boards. We need to be present in the room with our members of Parliament and those seeking re-election. Now, I'm looking around this room and I know there's people already on the boards and they know how to get there, right? I'm on a board. I've been on a board all the time. Are you kidding? Somebody told me that I could have, you know, have you ever tried to get a meeting with a member of Parliament and you get on the phone and you go, oh man, they're not calling me back, or hey, they said next June, it's like 6 months away. I go, wait a second, if you get on the Electoral District Association board of your member of Parliament, you meet with him once a month. He has to meet with you. You're on his board. You guys have regular meetings. You don't have to chase him down. He's in the room. You just go, hey, Bill, how you doing? Let's have a talk. I just want to talk to you about parents and their right to raise their kids the way they want. So that's important. We also have nomination elections where all the political parties, as we get closer to the horizon event of the election, these nominations are going to be taking place. Now that people may not know anything about nominations, but it's an opportunity to stand up and vote for who the candidates are going to be. How'd you like to pick the candidates? Now, you might say, well, I'm in Alberta, they're entrenched, we got all the candidates in place. That's fine. There's lots of places that need help. Maybe we could figure out a way to help others. You know what I mean? So if it's not you, it's your neighbor. And I don't have to remind you, you love your neighbor, right? Everybody in here loves your neighbor? Okay, good. We got that down. All right. We also have the National Board of Director election opportunities. I have not mentioned this. At every This is a big one. This is actually a really big one. The policy convention that's going to occur somewhere here, whether it's here or after, likely after, at that policy convention, the delegates that are elected from the 338, but now it's going to be 343 electoral districts, they're delegations. There's teams of 12 that go in to the actual convention. They all get to vote on who is going to be on the national governing board of the party. We're talking about the board of directors of the Conservative Party of Canada. So if you want to have a say in who is surrounding Pierre Poilievre, who is a little blind on life issues or however it is that you want, if you see he's got some shortcomings and you want to shore him up, then why don't we make sure that we are represented, that our views and values are represented on the national governing board of the party that's going to be governing our nation. That's totally doable, by the way. Again, I'm looking around the room. There are activists in this room that have actively worked to get people elected on that board, and it's just walking out a process. It's not anything too hard to do. It's just you got to put in the work. And then we actually have this last one I'm going to finish with here is one that each one of you, I'm hoping that you'll take. If you see on our website, we have some training, and it's called Negotiating for Platform. One of the things that I think as citizens, voting citizens, that we often forget when we're dealing with election time and people that are sitting in front of us that are asking us for their support, for your support, I think we're forgetting that they are looking at us and they're looking at something that we have that they want. And that's the way I view elections. I don't take a look at elections and go, okay, let me take a look at the list. Okay, they're all kind of not great, but who's the best of the worst on this list? I don't do that. What you want to do is you say to yourself, hey, okay, I'm looking at the list and there's some not great ones there, but maybe I can make them better, right? Maybe I can sit down with them, me and 30 of my friends, if you want to build a coalition of people, and you might want to say, hey, we're real excited. And by the way, this is the tone. What I'm about to say to you is the tone of our training. We don't do the slamming the fists on the table thing. We're not angry warriors. We're happy warriors. We are the guys, we're smiling all the time. You should see us in the battle. We are the guys you're going, wow, you don't even look like you're in battle. I know, because we're having the best time of our lives. But when we're sitting down in front of elected representatives and they look at us and say, look, I really want your support, I go, fantastic. First of all, before we get to that, I want to say thank you, because that's rare air. You running and serving us the way you have, not many people are willing to make the sacrifices. I just want to say thanks so much for you doing that. Thank you so much for the time that you've taken away from your family to fly back and forth to Ottawa all the time, or up to legislatures or whatever, whoever you're talking to. And I just wanted to say that because it really is important to me that you know I appreciate you. Now, let's get down to it. This is what I'm looking for. You're looking for my support. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that when you take a look at a piece of legislation in the House of Commons, whatever it is, for the next 4 years, if you're elected as a member of Parliament, I want you to know that I believe that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. And I want you to never pass a piece of legislation that in any way ever jeopardizes or in any way compromises my authority as a parent to do just that. Are we clear on that? Is that good? Are we all right? Good. Let's move on to the next one. I expect, as do me and 30 of my friends, as a matter of fact, I belong to a church of 600. All of us, we all are in agreement. Maybe we could put you up on the stage here and we'll have a conversation with you. We all expect that when you get into office that you don't just respect my right of belief and freedom of religion, but I expect you to fight to defend it. So it's not good enough that if I get attacked and my right of belief is attacked, I can't have you sitting in your seat in the House of Commons. I need you to stand up and I need you to say, I am going to stand between you and that attack on your right of belief. Are we clear on that? Good. Now let's move on to protecting the vulnerable. There's legislation being passed in the House of Commons all the time, that does not check the box first of evaluating whether it's dangerous for people if they pass the legislation. Take a look at euthanasia. They were required by euthanasia or marijuana legislation. They're required to ensure that no people are harmed or placed in harm's way by a piece of legislation. Now, if that's the first box he's willing to, or she's willing to check, that you've done a complete study, you know where the risks are, you understand who the vulnerable people are, you've done an assessment. It's not, as a matter of fact, why don't you do the same assessment that you do for the environment for children? You know, how about for trees and children? We'll put trees and children in the same category. How about that? So that's what I'm going to require, that you check that box first. And finally, there's a burden of debt on the back of my kids and my grandkids right now that you placed there in previous governments. And I'm not mad, because, you know, I understand the things, because we're here where we are. That's where we are. But moving forward, I need to see your plan on how you're going to lift that burden of debt off the back of my children and future generations, because the yoke of excessive taxation is going to turn them into bond servants of civil government, and my kids aren't slaves. They're heirs to the king. It's a whole other different mindset that we operate on as members of the body of Christ here. And so if we're clear on that, hey, let's go, let's talk. Here's my vote. Do you still want it? You know? And I think these kinds of conversations, this is called negotiating for platform. Because when you're on the road to an election, if you have the kind of conversation that's respectful and honest, and you put a bit of a coalition together, which, by the way, here, this video will teach you how to put a coalition together. This puts tools in your hands to build a coalition of support around your ideas, right? But if you put a bit of a coalition together, I can assure you, you're going to have a much better response, and you're going to have a better relationship moving forward with your elected representative after they're elected and in government, because this day is coming. This day is coming. So I thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate so much being given the opportunity to share this with you, and I look forward to serving you on the National Leadership Briefing, where you'll get a much broader picture of all of our training strategies, and I think that you'll have a lot of fun hanging out with us. So thanks a lot for your time. Okay, so we'll make sure that we have the video that is available to you in the post-briefing notes today. If you're watching this today on social media and you are not registered for the National Leadership Briefing, you will not be receiving the post notes. You need to go to nlbcanada.com and register for the next briefing, and we'll make sure we get those resources out to you. Also, make sure you check the YouTube channel, because you want to make sure that all of the previous briefings you have access to. As I mentioned during that training that we did in Calgary, that QR code that was on the board there, that is the May tools training that we did. So if you go to the YouTube channel, National Leadership Briefing, you'll find the May 2024 NLB, and you will see there that whole video there is the video that you can use to help you build those coalitions to advance the things that you believe in into groups of people that can work together and move together into the future towards those horizon events, whatever they are. You will also find on the YouTube channel our NLB Essentials videos. These are those foundational training videos under the playlist NLB Essentials. Okay, let's keep moving on. Like I say, we got to keep a brisk pace today. We've got a lot to cover, and I want to get you out of here on time. All right, this is a Father's Day event that's coming up, and I had a conversation earlier this week with Jonathan Lewis. I'm just going to bring him on right now. We've got a video that we recorded together, and it's about this Father's Day coming up, and a really, really great website and great event that he's got information to share with you about. Okay, let's take it away. So let's share some of the details now. Now we've got Father's Day coming up. First off, before we get to the event, can you just share a little bit about your heart? Because you have such a heart for men and fathers in our nation and around the world. And just tell me a little bit about when, and everyone who's on the briefing today here, where did that come from? Like, where did it start?
This started for me, gosh, probably when I was 15 years old, and I watched my dad drown in front of me here in Nova Scotia. So I think, like a lot of things, when a man is called to do something, people see the product, but what they don't see is the 3 or 4 decades where God pulled them aside and pulled them into the wilderness and prepared them. And all I can say is I'm coming out of that wilderness with a calling. It started a year ago on a 5-day hike with a bunch of guys. And I was actually complaining to the Lord. I said, Lord, I don't understand. I've been up here on this mountain for 4 days, pouring into these guys, praying for their marriages. This guy's wife's having an affair. But I was kind of hoping to come up here and hear from you when it comes to my own family and my daughters. And I didn't realize how close we were to the parking lot and a 5-day hike. And the Lord said, Jonathan, you're doing exactly what I want you to do. I just want you to keep doing this. And so here I am a year later. Last night I was talking to a guy whose wife left him a week ago. Thankfully, she came home last night. Tonight, I'm talking to a pastor who hasn't seen or heard from his 2 kids in 2 years and is trying to figure out how to continue to minister to his own congregation when he's being alienated from his kids. So the fact is, men are under attack, and whether it's pornography or drugs or video games or work or some insecurity or some terrible event that happened to them, like me when they were young, it's eroding our confidence. And I only know one way to find my confidence again, and it's in our Heavenly Father. And so I really feel like God has called me to be a flag bearer, a clearinghouse for ministries for men. So if you've got addiction issues, go to Teen Challenge or other great facilities. But we want to just put the narrative, the discussion, and the dialogue on the table where men feel safe to talk about things. Robert Beeson and I are partnering. He's at Solo Parent in the States. They just got in with the U.S. military. And we're going to set up chat rooms for men. And I've already got guys volunteering to man those chat rooms that have gone through divorce or came out of the porn industry and were actually a star in the porn industry. And they're going to host the chat room on pornography and how this is destroying your brain and your soul. So I am all in to do damage for the kingdom and call men back to our Father. I am not perfect. I am a flawed, on a good day, recovered workaholic, and on a bad day, a workaholic. And I just know that our Father loves us. And he was even reminding me of that yesterday and today. He's so sweet how he shows up in our life. He took me into Luke. Actually, I'll reference it here for you because I texted it to my wife while I was driving. So there you go. There's imperfection. But it was Luke 10:38-42, and it was when Mary and Martha were preparing for company, and Martha's running around, and she gets frustrated with Mary and says, Jesus, why don't you say something to her? And he said, well, no, what Mary's chosen is good. And I think sometimes as men, we just need to rest and just rest in our Father. And we don't have to do works. We don't have to earn his approval. Like Zephaniah 3:17 says, he just looks down on us with love. And I had a pastor who's mentoring me, John Muller, shout out to John, down in North Carolina. And he said to me yesterday, Jonathan, what do you think God sees when he looks at you? And I struggled with that. I was like, well, Jesus, thank God. Right? That's what he sees. Hopefully he sees Jesus in me, behind me, under me, on top of me, through me. And he said, no, but really, what do you think God sees when he sees Jonathan? We know that he sees Jesus. You're a new creation in him. And I struggled with answering that. And I think that's something that every one of us should be able to answer very quickly. And if you can't, then my ask is join me. Join me in going to our Father's house on Father's Day. I'm going to fast. I'm going to fast from this thing and food on the Saturday, the 15th. I'm going to get up early and I'm going to spend some real time in prayer. I love that quiet time with our Father. And I'm going to read Psalm 51. I don't know why, but the Holy Spirit put it on me to encourage men to read Psalm 51. And to give you context, that is the psalm that David wrote in the wake of his sin with Bathsheba when he killed Uriah. And Nathan had confronted his sin. And it was contrition. The first tenet of the gospel is contrition, to say, I have sinned. And I love when he says, against you and you alone have I sinned. Restore unto me the joy of my salvation. If you guys want a cure for anxiety, join me in reading Psalm 51 and prayerfully come to our Father. And then the plan is to walk. The 500 guys in Charleston, they're at a pretty big church. They have these little go-karts that take you from the outer parking to the church. So they're actually just going to walk around the church 7 times, which is still 3.2 miles, over 5 kilometers. Another church in Ontario is having baptisms when the guys arrive at the church. The crew I'm joining here in Nova Scotia, we're walking from a Coca-Cola plant about an hour, 5 kilometers. We're just going to meditate on God's word and spend time with each other, and then get to the church early so that we can go down to the altar and leave our idols and whatever else that we need to be vulnerable and open and honest about at the altar with our Father. And then, like Elijah said, here am I, send me. He's not looking for perfect men. He's actually looking for imperfect men who know that apart from him, they're not going to be able to accomplish anything.
That's right. Now, this is obviously a real strong foundation of your heart in what you've presented on your website. The resources that are on your website lay out the plan that really men can easily follow. The Saturday is the fasting from not whatever it is, right? And then Sunday is the walk in the morning. Just tell us how it's laid out on the website, so what people can expect to see when they go there.
So I guess it'll depend on if they're watching our outtakes, Doug, or if they're watching this. But the idea is to land on the website. There's an enrollment form there for team leads so they can be organized. We're trying to help you with that. Next year, we're going to have a CRM up and running where, we can interface with you and give you more resources. We're actually trying to find out who our team leads are, because I think we've got about 19 churches in 6 weeks. From Dallas to Utah to South Carolina, North Carolina to, from now I understand, Vancouver, Calgary, Ontario, and Eastern Canada. So in Canada, we can say we beat the Americans on this, and we're already coast to coast. But it lays out the whole framework. And the idea is to just bring yourself into a place the day before where, instead of looking for Father's Day to be about us being celebrated by our wives and kids, let's celebrate our Heavenly Father and recognize that we're accountable to him for them. We have to stand before our Father and give an account for our families. And, Ephesians 5:25 makes it very clear. The Apostle Paul says to love our wives like Christ loved the church, and to be prepared to present her to our Father. So my desire is that men would join me in dying to their flesh, and really submit to God's authority over our lives and get real with him this coming Father's Day.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing this website and the event details with us. I know there's going to be many on the briefing that are going to want to join you on that day. And in solidarity, Fathers for Fathers, and that's your website, fathersforfathers.org. And we'll make sure in the post-briefing notes today that we've got all those details for anything. Anything, last words for the men and the fathers and the church folks that are going to be on the call today?
Well, I think you should share at least one or two of the outtakes. But aside, because we're still men and we need to laugh and we need to enjoy life. But yeah, I would say my biggest prayer, and I am praying for this, I'll probably actually fast for some time leading up to it here in the next week. But my prayer is that the men that God has in mind for 2024, that the Holy Spirit would already be working on them and that they would have a mighty encounter. And I know there's a lot of men already praying for those men here at Fathers for Fathers and both sides of the border. My big challenge to you is don't do this lightly. Gosh, I prayed a prayer about 8 weeks ago. And I said, Lord, this scares me to even pray this prayer. And I can't help but feel that it's got to be the Spirit putting it on me to pray this. Because I've already been through a lot in my life, a lot. But if you are willing and you think I'm capable of being the man that you could use to change lives in a powerful way, I know that means that there's some serious character development that has to ensue. And that comes typically from difficulties, Romans 5:3, 5:6, James 1 verse 2, Job said, though you slay me, yet will I trust you. But that was a prayer I prayed about 8 weeks ago. It's been the hardest 8 weeks of my life. And I've had some rough times. So my challenge to you is join me in praying those kinds of prayers. Those are bold prayers. But be prepared to follow it up, and don't expect God to do all the work. Like we need to show up. and be prepared to do the work with him.
That is such good counsel. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm
Yeah.
sure looking forward to following up with you and looking onto your Facebook page and Instagram pages and seeing all the great photos and things that people are going to be posting also about the events that they experience locally. Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate your time
All
today.
right. Thanks, Doug. I really appreciate you, man.
Okay, again, that is fathersforfathers.org. That's F-O-R, fathers, F-O-R, fathers.org. You will find fantastic information there about the event itself. You'll find tips and tricks. You'll find different prompts for good conversations to have with other men as you're walking to church together. And you're also going to find Psalm 51, which I agree with Jonathan. Give it a read, meditate on it, pray about it. This is a good scripture for us this Father's Day as men and fathers for fathers. Okay. All right. Fantastic. On the home stretch, let's get to the Transformer Zoom event. I want you to meet this gentleman, Mark DeHoog. He is going to be the guest. So let's bring him on right now. Well, Mark, thanks you so much for taking the time to join us here today. How have you been?
Thanks, Doug. Great to be here. I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day, and good things are happening.
They are, and they're only going to get better because we have another Transformers Zoom call event coming up on Thursday, June the 13th, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern, and you are the special guest. So I want to get into that and ask you to share a little bit about what you're going to be talking about that day. However, I want to find out a little bit about your heart for the community. Mark, you are completely engaged in your local community in British Columbia. You have a heart for the people that live there. Just tell us a little bit about sort of what's going on there, and how did you develop this love that you have that's so obvious for the community that you live in?
Well, I live in a community in northern British Columbia. I am kind of center of British Columbia, about a 4-hour drive from Alaska, actually. Maybe 5 hours if you're a slow driver like Doug. But if you, but we really just kind of take the posture. Actually, the story goes for me. You know, I was in this city with my family about 16 years ago on a visit, and we were standing in the middle of the market on a Saturday morning, and I felt Holy Spirit say to me, Mark, this is your city. Not in a place of ownership, but just a sense of assignment. And so from that point, we didn't even live here at the time. I just kind of went, okay, Lord, I don't know what that means totally, but would you show me? What does it mean to live with the city in your heart? And so that's kind of been a journey for us. And ultimately, we kind of live out of Luke chapter 10. Find the person of peace when you come to a city and ask for their blessing. And so our heart really in our community is just to find the people of peace, which, by the way, are not always currently believers. They are people who want the best for their city and are longing for a better city than what they have experienced to date. And so we just seek the heart of God and coming alongside of those people and work to build a better city. Ultimately, I believe that is the way that Jesus came. He came to respond to build the world a better way. And he lived that out incarnationally, and that's what he's asking us to do. And so I just carry the spirit of sonship into my city, and I just go to my city leaders. I go to leaders in any who are leading in any way for the betterment of the city, and I say, what can I do to serve? And we live that out, starting from the small and letting it grow to the complex and the difficult, and that the generational problems that exist in every city. But in our city, we're trying to tackle those together.
Wow, Mark, well, having known you for a while now, this is not a surprise to me that this is where you come from and this is where your heart comes from and what you believe and walk out in your life. And I'm excited because if that's the foundation of what you believe and how you live your life, you started talking a little while ago about something called kingdom ecosystem. Kingdom ecosystem. And this is the subject that you've chosen to speak on the next Transformer Zoom call. So can you give us just a taste about what it is that a kingdom ecosystem is and how you're going to be presenting on the call coming up on June the 13th?
That's a great question, Doug. I would say for me, primarily, it's learning to look through a different lens at our communities. I'm a local church guy. I lead a faith community. You know, I've been leadership in the local church for almost all of my professional life. I'm also a business person, so I have these dual things that I do. But really, the lens in which we look at our world is very important. If I look at the world through the lens of my local church, um, there are things that I can see and there's things that I can't see. But if I look at the world through the lens of the kingdom, I see that the local church is a part of a bunch of vibrant things that God is doing in the community. And really, the important thing is to find those things that God is doing and join with them to see that happen. So it can happen through, you know, the local church, but it also happens in government, in business, in leadership, when communities come together to support families. That's all kingdom. And sometimes we don't see it if we're too busy focused on what are we doing as a local church and the activities that we're doing. But there are other things that are happening that God's in, and we want to discover those and find those and build those. So that ecosystem exists. We don't create it. We don't try to build it. It's already there that God's already doing in every community. And if we can look through that lens, we begin to discover, oh, God's up to something over here. I'm going to come alongside this because as a part of the church, we can bring life to things that no other organization or no other organism in the world can. So the ecosystem is about living organisms coming together and functioning together for the betterment of what's around them.
Oh my goodness! Now I'm getting real excited. Okay, this is Thursday. Next
Yeah, me
Thursday.
Too. Let's go. Let's go.
Isn't that good? Let's start it right now. Like, everybody log
Yeah.
on. No, that's great, Mark. I'm looking forward to it. So that is next Thursday, June the 13th, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern. With Mark DeHoog, and we're going to be talking about Kingdom Ecosystem. So we'll see you all on the next Transformer Zoom call. Thank you so much, Mark, for being with us today. I look forward to
Thanks,
it.
Doug.
Oh,
Look
so
forward to
much,
it.
man. So much.
Yeah.
So excited. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
We're crying out for the church to be the church in the community.
The ecclesia is a relational model that God has been calling forward.
Being present is about showing up on a regular basis.
So I'm convinced that God will birth a love in one's heart for the place He has put you in. And sometimes that requires a process. Sometimes we don't initially love the place where we are or where God is sending us, but we respond in obedience.
And I believe there must be the restoration of the cry of God in the heart of us as leaders to cry out to God for our cities.
And for those of you who have a heart for your local community, then I would encourage you to participate in what we call Transformer Calls, focused on your engagement and the love that you have for your communities.
Well, that's our time for today. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for joining us here on the briefing. Again, if you're not registered for the National Leadership Briefing at nlbcanada.com, you will not be receiving the post notes. So make sure you get that done. Go to the YouTube channel and please take some time to go to our website at Canada Family Action. That is the parent organization that makes all this possible, and partner with us. I invite you, please. There are ways to partner with us at Canada Family Action, and we would surely appreciate those resources so that we can leverage them to continue to reach out, touch more people, grow our coalitions, and advance the things that you and I believe in together. So thank you again for your time today. I look forward to seeing you next month, where we're going to have another great briefing. In the meantime, God bless you, God bless your family, and may God continue to bless this great nation of Canada. Bye for now.